They pushed me out of my own home with a suitcase on the porch. But what they didn't know was that the past they tried to throw away was about to rewrite their future forever. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and let me know where you're tuning in from. Trust me, you'll want to hear how an old woman turned a forgotten box of tapes into something bigger than Hollywood itself. My name is Evelyn Rose. I'm 72 years old. At this age, I've learned that wrinkles are easier to iron than family betrayals, and that nothing stings more than being told you're better off somewhere else. But let me take you back. It was a Thursday evening, just after sunset, the house glowing the way it always did when the porch light flicked on. This was the house where I raised my son Jason, where my husband George filled every room with laughter and film reels, where birthdays and Christmases bled into memories so warm they felt stitched into the walls. I thought we were gathering for dinner. Instead, Jason cleared his throat in that awkward way he always had when he was hiding something. His wife Lisa leaned against the counter, arms crossed, her phone lighting up every 30 seconds. "Mom," Jason began. "We've been thinking. It's not safe for you to stay here alone. The house is too much. The yard, the repairs, the upkeep, it's overwhelming." I smiled politely, though my chest tightened. "I've been managing just fine." Lisa didn't bother looking up from her screen. "It's not practical, Evelyn. You could fall. You could get hurt. Besides, the market is hot. It would be irresponsible not to sell now." There it was. Not concern. Profit. I felt the floor tilt under me. "You're talking about selling the house?" Jason nodded, as if discussing the weather. "We've already spoken to an agent. The papers are ready. You'll get a nice little nest egg, and we've arranged a place for you. Just a room over the laundry at a friend's property. It's temporary." Temporary. That word clanged in my ears. Temporary, like my usefulness. Temporary, like the mother they no longer needed once the checks had been signed. They had already packed a suitcase for me. It sat by the door, my entire life reduced to one piece of luggage. My son's eyes slid away when I looked at him. Lisa's nails tapped against her phone case. "George built this house," I said quietly, more to myself than to them. I could still picture him sanding the banister, whistling between his teeth, camera lenses scattered across the dining table. Lisa shrugged. "George is gone. We need to think about the living." Something inside me cracked like porcelain. That night, I wandered through the rooms one last time. The wallpaper we'd chosen together. The dent in the kitchen doorframe where Jason had marked his height every birthday. The smell of sawdust lingering faintly in the garage. And then the final cruelty. Jason sliding the bolt across the garage door. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll keep your husband's junk safe." Junk. That's what he called the boxes my husband had guarded all his life. The suitcase waited on the porch like a verdict. Navy blue, corners scuffed, duct-taped handle. George once carried it up 3 flights when the elevator broke. Now it stood zipped, ready to escort me out of my own house. Jason held a manila envelope, avoiding my eyes. "Mom, we just need your signature. This will be better for everyone." Better for everyone. Always the same words. Lisa stood by the garage, keys jingling. "The buyers want the place cleared. Safer if the garage stays locked." Before the door shut, I caught a glimpse. Cardboard boxes stacked high. George's handwriting on the sides, reels. Cameras. Tapes. Then metal slammed against concrete, and the key disappeared into her pocket. Jason tapped the papers with a pen. "It's a cash offer. We can close in 30 days. The new place is smaller, cozy. You'll be safe." Safe. They called it safety, but it felt like erasure. I touched the suitcase handle. Cold heavy. They had packed it without asking me what mattered. The letters, the photograph, the chipped mug George teased me about. They were still inside the house, abandoned like I'd already gone. Lisa finally looked at me. "You'll thank us once you settle in." I met her stare. "Thank you," I said slowly, "for deciding my life without me." Jason shifted. "We're trying to help." Help came with a suitcase on the porch and a garage locked against memory. I took the envelope, skimmed the lines. Neat boxes for my name, Evelyn Rose. Clauses about personal effects removed at seller's expense. As if George's reels were clutter, not history. Jason offered the pen again. "Please, Mom. Let's not drag this out. I closed the folder. I'll read it properly first. His jaw tightened. Lisa was already back on her phone, laughing at something that had nothing to do with me. I lifted the suitcase. Heavier than it should be, Will's knocking against the step. Inside, the house breathed familiar and patient, as if waiting to see what I'd do. From the kitchen window, I stared at the garage door, silent and obedient. But I knew better. Locks don't bury the past. I pressed my palm to the glass. The past doesn't stay closed, I whispered. And in that moment, I wasn't leaving. Not yet. The room was smaller than my old pantry. A narrow bed pushed against one wall, a dresser with a crooked drawer, and a single window overlooking the parking lot. That was it. Just temporary, Mrs. Caldwell said as she set a folded quilt at the foot of the bed. Her voice was brisk, practical, the tone of someone doing a good deed, but hoping it wouldn't take too long. Until you get settled somewhere proper. Temporary. The word rang in my ears like a church bell. Jason had used it. Lisa had echoed it. Now Mrs. Caldwell repeated it, wrapping my exile in a ribbon of false reassurance. Temporary always meant we don't want you here, but we don't have the heart to say permanent. The quilt smelled faintly of lavender detergent, stronger than the stale air of the little room. The floor vibrated with a low hum. Below me the washers and dryers were already spinning, turning strangers' clothes in endless circles. Every 40 minutes a fresh vibration would climb through the floorboards, reminding me I was living above other people's laundry. I lowered myself onto the bed. The springs groaned, protesting my weight. The mattress was thin, the kind that bruises your hip if you roll too far to one side. My eyes traveled across the walls, beige paint, no pictures, no shelves. A room without history, without memory, designed for transients. Through the window I could see only asphalt and headlights. No roses, no birdsong, no golden evening light spilling across George's old reels. Just a row of cars, engines coughing to life, horns blaring in impatience, the beep-beep of someone locking a van. Oil stains instead of blossoms. Concrete instead of soil. Discarded. The word hit me harder than Jason's better for everyone. I wasn't relocated. I wasn't starting fresh. I was discarded. Moved from the center of my own life to a room above a laundry. Like a sweater someone no longer wears but doesn't throw out for fear of seeming cruel. The suitcase waited by the dresser. I forced myself to open it, though the sound of the zipper felt like betrayal. Inside, shirts folded wrong, a sweater I never liked, a pair of shoes that didn't even match. Jason and Lisa had decided what I needed. They had chosen clothes, but left behind what mattered. The mug with the tiny chip George teased me about, the photograph tucked inside my favorite book, the reels stacked in the garage, our reels, his reels. All locked away. I closed the suitcase. The zipper teeth clicked like handcuffs. Mrs. Caldwell cleared her throat in the doorway. The kitchen's downstairs if you want tea. Help yourself. Thank you. I managed. She hesitated, studying me with kind but uncomfortable eyes. You'll be fine, Evelyn. You'll see. Sometimes smaller spaces feel cozier. Cozier. Another polite lie. I smiled because that's what you do when people mean well, but don't understand. She nodded, relieved, and left me alone. Silence returned, broken only by the churn of washers and the faint clink of coins dropping into machines. I sat on the bed, palms pressed to my knees, and closed my eyes. And suddenly George was there. Not in the room, but in memory, strong, vivid, alive. He stood in our backyard, the Aeroflex camera on his shoulder, sun glaring against the lens hood. He was grinning, one eye squinting as he adjusted focus. He always came alive behind the camera, as if framing the world gave him permission to truly see it. I remembered the day clearly. I had been planting bulbs along the fence. My hands were in the soil, dirt under my nails, when he raised the camera. "Look up, Evie," he'd called, his voice warm as summer air. I'd looked up, embarrassed, brushing hair from my face. And he laughed. Oh, how he laughed. Perfect. Don't move. The shutter clicked. Word. Captured me forever. Then he lowered the camera and stepped close, brushing a curl from my cheek. "You'll surprise the world someday," he'd whispered. "You just don't know it yet." I opened my eyes. The little room swam back into view. Beige walls. A rattling vent. The hum of another wash cycle starting below. But the memory glowed brighter than the fluorescent bulb overhead. Discarded? Yes. Defeated? Not yet. I straightened, pressing my back against the wall. The springs beneath me trembled with the vibration of the laundry below. But I let them shake. It felt less like a nuisance and more like an engine warming up. A reminder that motion still existed. That cycles still turned. That life didn't stop just because my family decided I was inconvenient. The window framed nothing but asphalt and taillights. Yet I stared at it until the glass blurred. In the reflection, I almost saw George again. Camera lifted, smile unshaken. "You'll surprise the world someday, Evie," his voice echoed. "Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But the world hadn't seen the last of me. It happened by accident." For weeks the garage had been sealed, the door locked tight. Lisa's keys always jingling in her pocket like a warning bell. That heavy metal door was the line I wasn't allowed to cross. The place where my past with George had been boxed and silenced. But accidents happen. And sometimes they feel like invitations. It was late afternoon when I noticed it. Lisa had been rushing to load groceries into the kitchen, juggling her phone between shoulder and ear. She pulled the garage door halfway down, then a call distracted her. She went inside. The door left slightly open, barely more than a crack, but enough. Enough for me. My pulse quickened. I sat perfectly still at first, afraid to move, afraid to want. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen filled the silence. And I heard Lisa's voice drifting through the house, sharp and impatient as she argued with someone on the phone. The crack in the garage door beckoned. I rose slowly, each step careful, as if the wooden floor might betray me. My breath felt too loud. My heart hammered in my chest. The handle was cold in my palm. I eased the door upward, just an inch. Then another. Dust motes floated in the slant of light, shimmering like secrets that had waited too long. The smell hit me first. Old wood, motor oil, cardboard softened by years of damp. Beneath it all, something faint and achingly familiar, celluloid film. That sharp, metallic sweetness I remembered from every night George had hunched over a projector, threading reels with steady hands. I stepped inside. The garage was crowded with the ordinary debris of life. Boxes of Christmas decorations, half-empty paint cans, folded lawn chairs, and a bike with a flat tire. But my eyes searched for handwriting. His handwriting. There. On the far shelf, half hidden behind a stack of blankets. A cardboard box slumped under its own weight. The marker ink had faded, but the words were still clear. George Tapes. The sight stole my breath. For a long moment I couldn't move. My knees felt weak, my throat tight. That handwriting had once labeled everything in our house. Film canisters, light meters, even jars of screws. Seeing it now was like hearing his voice whisper from the other side of time. I reached for the box. The cardboard sagged under my fingers, fragile from years of storage. Dust coated my skin. Inside, something shifted, the faint rattle of plastic reels. I slid the box forward, careful, terrified it might collapse. My arms strained. It was heavier than I expected. My mind kept whispering. Too loud. Too slow. She'll hear you. From the kitchen came the muffled slam of a cupboard and Lisa's laughter, sharp, distracted. I froze, clutching the box to my chest, heart pounding so hard I thought it might rattle the reels themselves. Seconds passed. She didn't come. I edged toward the door, each step an eternity. My shoes whispered against the concrete. A spiderweb brushed my cheek, clinging, and I nearly cried out. I bit my lip hard, tasting iron. Finally, I reached the crack of daylight. I slipped through, dragging the box with me, and lowered the door until it clicked shut again. Silence. I stood in the hallway, trembling, the box heavy in my arms. The cardboard left smudges on my blouse, dust clinging to my skin. But inside that box, inside those reels, was George. His eyes, his hands, his world. I carried it upstairs to my little room, hugging it against me like a stolen treasure. Each step felt like rebellion, like I was smuggling history past the guards who wanted it forgotten. When I finally set the box on the narrow bed, I dared to lift the lid. The tape reached its end with a loud clunk. The screen dissolved into snow. I sat frozen, the room still humming with his ghost. The cassette ejected, warm from the machine. I cradled it in both hands like an infant. Behind the scenes, 1976. The title written in his slanted script. This wasn't junk. This wasn't clutter to be buried under paint cans and folded tarps. This was legacy. Evidence. A treasure chest the world didn't know it had lost. And I had it. I pressed the cassette to my chest. My tears had dried into determination. Jason and Lisa thought they had thrown me away, locked my past in a garage like useless junk. But in that single box, in that single reel, I had the power to rewrite everything. The world would see George again. And this time, they'd see me too. The tapes were heavier than they looked. I carried them through downtown like contraband, the cardboard box pressed against my chest. People rushed past on the sidewalk, arms full of shopping bags, coffee cups, phones pressed to their ears. No one looked at me twice, an old woman with gray hair and a box. But inside this box, I was carrying the pulse of history. The law office was on the 7th floor, a sleek glass building that seemed too sharp, too modern for me. My reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall looked small, wrinkled, carrying something far too large for her frame. But my spine was straighter than it had been in months. "Mrs. Rose?" the receptionist asked, eyes flicking to the dust-stained box. "Yes," I said. My voice didn't tremble. She led me down a corridor lined with framed degrees. Inside the office, a man in his 40s stood to greet me. Crisp suit, careful hair, glasses that made him look both clever and cautious. His nameplate read, Daniel Porter, ESQ. "Mrs. Rose, please have a seat." I lowered the box onto the polished oak table between us. Dust left a faint ring on the perfect wood. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What have we here?" I opened the flaps with trembling fingers. One by one, I lifted the reels, setting them on the table like relics. The plastic spools clicked softly against the surface. Daniel leaned forward, curiosity overtaking formality. "This handwriting," he murmured, tracing George's fading ink. "Is it your late husband's?" "Yes. He was a cameraman. Hollywood 1970s. I slid one cassette toward him. Behind the scenes, 1976. Daniel tilted it toward the light, eyes narrowing. "Wait. This is the film. The film that changed everything." I nodded. My throat felt tight. He leaned back, exhaling sharply. "Do you realize what you have here? Studios pay fortunes for even seconds of unseen footage from productions like this. Behind-the-scenes reels, unedited takes, this could be historic." "I watched one last night," I admitted. George laughing, filming the actors. Raw moments. The kind nobody has ever seen. Daniel's professional composure cracked. His eyes gleamed. "This is extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary." I folded my hands in my lap. "But the studio, they made the film. Don't they own the rights?" He shook his head slowly. "Not necessarily. Your husband created this footage independently, yes? Off the main cameras, on his own equipment." "Yes. He always carried a second rig. Said the studio's cameras captured the story, but his lens captured the truth." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then legally, these tapes belong to him. And since he's passed, they belong to you. You're the sole heir, Mrs. Rose. The rights are yours." The words struck like lightning. Mine. After months of being told where I could live, what I could keep, what I must sign, suddenly something was mine. Not a burden. Not a charity. Not a box of junk. Mine. I pressed a hand against my chest, steadying my breath. "So I can sell them? Or release them?" "Absolutely. Studios would line up for this. Private collectors too. Even archives would compete to preserve it. The market is wide open. But tread carefully. Don't let anyone lowball you. This is legacy material." Legacy. The word felt heavy, precious. Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice as if the walls might be listening. "Do you understand, Mrs. Rose? You are holding cultural gold. Studios build entire documentaries around a single lost interview or a 2-minute blooper reel. You have hours, possibly days, unseen footage of legends. And the law is clear. These rights belong to you." My eyes blurred. Not from sadness this time, but from something sharper, brighter. Power. For the first time since George died, I wasn't a widow packing a suitcase on someone else's porch. I wasn't a burden in a laundry room. I was Evelyn Rose, heir to reels the world had forgotten, sitting across from a lawyer who looked at me not as an inconvenience, but as a client holding dynamite. What should I do? I asked softly. First, Daniel said, we'll document everything. Chain of ownership, your husband's work history, proof of possession. Then we'll make discreet inquiries. I have contacts at the Academy Archive, at 3 major studios. We'll see who bites. Quietly, strategically. His words rolled like thunder in my ears. Contacts. Archives. Studios. They would want me. For months I had been invisible. Now people would seek me out. Daniel stacked the tapes carefully, reverently, like holy objects. Mrs. Rose, these aren't just home movies. This is history. And you're in control of it. In control. The receptionist wore black silk and a headset that seemed glued to her ear. She barely looked up when I gave my name. Ms. Rose? They're expecting you. Right this way. I followed her through glass doors that whispered shut behind us. The hallway gleamed. The air smelled faintly of citrus polish and money. Movie posters lined the walls. Frozen moments of films George had once touched, though his name never appeared on the credits. At the end of the corridor, double doors swung open. A conference room waited. Long table. Leather chairs. And at the head, 2 men and a woman in suits that cost more than my car ever had. Mrs. Rose, the tallest man said, rising with a smile so polished it could blind. Welcome. I'm Richard Hall, Acquisitions Director. Please sit. I lowered myself into the chair. My box of tapes rested on the table like a fourth guest. The woman leaned forward. We've reviewed the footage Mr. Porter sent us. Extraordinary doesn't even begin to cover it. I clasped my hands in my lap, trying not to shake. These are not just outtakes, Richard continued. They're candid moments with legends. Human, vulnerable, unscripted. The public has never seen them. The cultural value. He stopped himself, smiled again. And the financial value, of course, are immense. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, a contract. Neat paragraphs, bold headings, too many words for one lifetime. And at the bottom, a number. My eyes widened. I counted the digits twice, certain my vision had blurred. 7 figures. More money than George and I had earned in 45 years combined. For the exclusive rights to use this material in our upcoming documentary series, Richard said smoothly. We'll handle restoration, archiving, distribution. You'll retain executive producer credit. And of course, full payment upon signature. His pen lay across the line, gleaming silver. I reached for it, then stopped. What about George's name? My voice cracked. Will it be there? The woman's smile softened. Absolutely. He'll be credited as original cinematographer. Without his lens, none of this would exist. My throat closed. For decades, George had been the invisible man behind the camera. Now his name would stand where the world could see it. My fingers tightened around the pen. I thought of Jason, telling me I was better off in a senior home. Of Lisa, slamming the garage shut like she was sealing a tomb. Of my suitcase abandoned on a porch. And then I thought of George, brushing hair from my eyes, whispering, "You'll surprise the world someday, Evie." I signed. The room exhaled around me. Richard extended his hand, but I barely felt it. The papers slid away. The contract became theirs. The future became mine. Congratulations, Mrs. Rose, he said. You've just become a very wealthy woman. The receptionist walked me out, her headset flashing blue. This time she looked up, eyes flicking to the check in my hand. Something like respect passed across her face. Outside, the California sun felt different. Not harsher, not softer, just mine. For the first time in months, I wasn't someone's burden. Not a charity case. Not the widow they could push aside. I was Evelyn Rose, owner of a fortune, keeper of history. And I was only getting started. The bungalow in Santa Monica looked rinsed in sunlight. White stucco, blue door, bougainvillea climbing like it owned the wall. Not a mansion, just a house that breathed. Mine. Inside, I placed 3 things first. The chipped mug, the wedding photo, the locked cabinet of tapes. George would have smiled. Jason's text came the same day mail started forwarding. Mom, did you move to Santa Monica? Yes. How? With a key. Lisa wrote next. Rent there must be crazy. I answered. I don't discuss my finances. Her reply were family. Exactly. They drove by that weekend, slowing the car at the curb. I waved from the window. Neither waved back. The truth broke without me saying a word. That night Netflix dropped the teaser. Coming soon, Shadows of Hollywood. Grainy clapperboards. Actors laughing. And 2 names across the screen. Original cinematography, George Rose. Executive producer, Evelyn Rose. Jason called instantly. I let it ring. Lisa sent the link with 1 word. Explain. My answer, yes. By morning, they were on my porch. Jason's eyes were hollow. Lisa's voice sharp. Mom, what is this? You signed something? Do you even know what you're doing? I do, I said. So does my lawyer. So does the studio. Lisa tried to push past me. I blocked the doorway. We just want to talk inside, Jason said. No, I said. That's not happening. Lisa snapped. So you cut us out? I smiled. No. I finally set boundaries. Jason's tone cracked. We're your family. You said that when you left my suitcase on the porch? I reminded him. Family is a verb. You have to act like it. He looked lost. She looked furious. The ocean behind me kept rolling unconcerned. I closed the blue door gently. On the kitchen TV, the teaser looped. George's voice off camera, laughter, slate clapping shut. I touched the cabinet key in my pocket and whispered, We made it, George. The black car door opened, and for a second I almost forgot to breathe. Flashbulbs cracked the night like fireworks, voices shouting names, cameras stacked in rows. And me, Evelyn Rose, 72, walking into the storm of light. The carpet wasn't really red. Under the glare it burned scarlet, alive. A river carrying me toward the marquee. Netflix original documentary, Shadows of Hollywood. Smile this way, someone yelled. I did. Not because they told me to, but because George would have laughed at the sight of me in borrowed heels, my name echoing off buildings taller than our entire old neighborhood. Inside the theater, the posters glowed. My husband's face frozen mid-laugh on one wall, his handwriting scrawled across a clapperboard on another. And in the credits reel displayed on loop in the lobby, special thanks to Evelyn Rose. I touched the words as if they were braille. Solid. Mine. Journalists asked questions. How had the tapes survived? What did it feel like to hold history in a cardboard box? I gave them the truth in pieces. He kept everything, I said. Even me. When the lights dimmed and the screen came alive, my chest clenched. Grainy footage. 1976. George behind the camera, cracking jokes. A starlet rolling her eyes between takes. A director arguing with himself. History breathing again after 40 years of silence. The audience gasped, laughed, applauded. I pressed my palm flat on my lap to keep it steady. My name didn't come until the end, sliding across the black screen like a secret revealed. Special thanks, Evelyn Rose. I closed my eyes. For once I didn't feel small. Miles away, in a living room with cheaper wine and cheaper excuses, my grandchildren were watching too. Netflix had no velvet ropes, no exclusivity, just a screen and a password. Emily sat cross-legged on the rug, popcorn forgotten in her lap. Grandma's name, she whispered, pointing at the credits. Ryan leaned forward, wide-eyed. That's her? On Netflix. Lisa's hand tightened on the arm of the couch. Jason looked as though the ground beneath him had tilted. Neither spoke. The children didn't notice. Their eyes were glued to George's laughter, to the world their grandmother had carried out of a dusty garage. I didn't need to be in that living room to hear the silence. Silence heavy as confession. Silence that asked, how could we have thought she was disposable? Back at the theater, applause rose like a tide. The director bowed, the producers waved, and someone guided me toward a cluster of microphones. I wasn't supposed to say anything. Executive producers don't usually, but one reporter thrust a question like a spear. Mrs. Rose, what does this moment mean to you? I thought of the suitcase on the porch, the garage padlock, the beige walls of that borrowed room above the laundry, And then I thought of George behind the camera, telling me once, "You'll surprise them all, Evie." I leaned into the microphone. "It means they were wrong about me," I said. Cameras flashed again, hungry, capturing the line. And I let them. That night, walking out under the Los Angeles sky, the boulevard glittering, I carried no bitterness, only certainty. Sometimes revenge doesn't need shouting. Sometimes it looks like a name on a screen, a standing ovation, and two wide-eyed grandchildren whispering, "That's our grandma." The calls began before the sun had even set. First Jason. Then Lisa. Then Jason again. One after another, like waves trying to batter down a cliff that refused to move. The phone lay on the coffee table, glowing and buzzing, vibrating against the wood until the glass beside it rattled. My son's name lit up, disappeared, lit up again. I didn't reach for it. Instead, I reached for the chilled bottle of champagne waiting in my refrigerator. A gift from the studio, wrapped in gold foil, delivered with a handwritten note. To Evelyn Rose, "Thank you for saving history." I ran my thumb over the cork. The phone kept buzzing. I smiled, twisted the wire cage free, and let the cork fly. The sound cracked through the room like punctuation on a sentence I'd been waiting decades to finish. Foam spilled over the lip of the bottle, quick and eager, like laughter too long suppressed. I caught it in a glass, the bubbles rising fast, almost impatient, before bursting and vanishing into nothing. The phone buzzed again. Voicemail picked it up. Jason's voice spilling into the room. "Mom, please. You don't understand. We need to talk. Just call me back." A pause. His breathing uneven, nervous. "Don't do this to us." To us. The word was almost funny. When had it ever been us? Not when they left my suitcase on the porch. Not when Lisa locked the garage door with George's tape still inside. Not when they told me temporary, with voices that meant gone forever. I slid the phone into the drawer and shut it. The buzzing became muffled, trapped, powerless. The champagne glass was cool in my hand as I walked to the wide window of my Santa Monica home. Outside, the city glowed like embers. Palm trees swayed, the ocean rolled, and traffic hummed like a distant lullaby. For the first time in years, the world felt wide open. Behind me, the television glowed with the frozen credits of Shadows of Hollywood. George's name stretched across the screen. My name, too solid, permanent, not tucked into the shadows but illuminated before millions of eyes. I sipped, closing my eyes. The taste was sharp, crisp, alive. And in that silence, memory crept back. The cramped room above the laundry, detergent in the air. The suitcase left on the porch, shirts crumpled inside. The first time I slid a tape into the VCR, and saw George laughing from 1976, alive again for a moment. All of it led here. To this house. This view. This glass in my hand. The phone buzzed again, dragging me back. I ignored it. Instead, I thought of Emily and Ryan, my grandchildren, sitting cross-legged on the carpet at home, popcorn forgotten, eyes wide as they watched Netflix. Their grandmother's name appearing on screen. I wasn't there to see it, but I knew the silence that must have filled that living room. The silence of children realizing their parents had lied, had underestimated, had tried to bury something priceless and failed. Another call. Another voicemail. Lisa this time, her voice thin and strained. "Evelyn, answer. We need to know what you've done. How could you sign something without us? Do you even realize what this means?" I leaned against the window, the city lights shimmering back at me. Of course I realized. I had realized the moment the studio lawyer slid the contract across the table. The moment I put pen to paper. The moment I chose myself over their comfort. I realized, and I did it anyway. I raised the glass. "To George," I whispered, to the reflection of my husband's smile that still lived in memory. "We did it." The phone kept buzzing, frantic, like a trapped insect. But it couldn't touch me anymore. Their voices, their demands, their false urgency, just noise behind a closed drawer. I laughed softly, not bitter but free. The same laugh George caught once on tape when I tripped over a cable, and he called me his leading lady. For years they thought I was nothing more than baggage. A burden to be shuffled aside. Clutter to be cleared out. But tonight, my name was written in light across the credits of a global premiere. Tonight, I was immortal in a way none of them had ever imagined. I took another slow sip, letting the bubbles spark across my tongue. They thought they could throw me away, I said to the window. They thought I was junk. Old clutter. The city stretched beneath me, wide and alive, proof that I wasn't done, not by a long shot. I set the glass down, let the words rise out of me steady and final, louder than any buzzing phone, stronger than any locked garage door. They thought they discarded garbage, but that garbage turned out to be my ticket to eternity. And with that, I turned off the light, leaving only the glow of the television credits to fill the room.